So first of all, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the SUNS webinar. My name is Ben Graham. I will be one of our 3 hosts today for the webinar. Before we get started, just want to cover a couple of quick items. For one, the webinar is being recorded. So don't worry, afterwards we will share this with everyone who has attended, and from there you can share it with fellow colleagues. And 2, please, if you have questions, feel free to put it in the chat or the question and answer session, and we will try to address that either in the moment or at the end, depending on time remaining. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So once again, my name is Ben Graham, and today our webinar is called We Made It Easy, Smart Factory and Harnessing the Power of Machine Data to Keep Your Shop Floor Running. Okay, so we're going to go to the next slide. There we go. Sorry, a little delay. So once again, my name is Ben Graham. I'm an account executive and a recent addition to the Godlan and the Prophecy IoT team. My background, I'm a mechanical engineer, and I've been working in electromechanical automation engineering before I joined Godlan. And I'll hand it over to my colleagues Ron and Phil to introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ron Klontz. I'll be assisting with the presentation today. Been working with Sightline and Cloud Suite close to 30 years. Also one of the original kind of architects behind the Smart Factory powered by Prophecy. So I'll be doing part of the presentation today, and just looking forward to really introducing and discussing how people can deploy Smart Factory in their organization.
Everyone, I'm Phil Bartlett. I've spent many years working in a variety of industries, from aerospace to plastics to metal fabrication and automotive and et cetera. Multiple ERP experiences along the way, specifically heavy density of experience within the CSI Sightline space, working with customers on implementations as well as selecting CSI along the path. Happy to be here and talk in much more detail about how we can start working with your machines, gathering that data, and I think you're going to enjoy the next 45 minutes to an hour.
Great. So before we begin with the formal presentation, just wanted to give a couple of rhetorical questions, maybe food for thought and ideas that are going to be covered in the webinar today. So some of these concepts that we're going to be addressing today are things like, what does unplanned downtime cost you? What if you could identify 15 to 20% more productivity on your shop floor? Power surges on your fill line are creating waste. What should you have known? And could this have been prevented? And really exploring maybe what are your top 5 reasons for downtime and how will Prophecy be useful in addressing these issues? And also, do you know your utilization on the shop floor? And specifically for those of you maybe in the CNC subtractive manufacturing world, the spindle vibration on your Haas UMC 500 is out of tolerance. Now what do you do? What could we have known, and is this preventable? And of course, how can we improve OEE? So this is a topic I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with, and at least have heard the buzzword. And we're going to explore how can we address this, and how can the Prophecy toolset be used in conjunction to answer a lot of these questions. So once again, those are general food for thought of what we're going to be addressing over the next 45 minutes to an hour. And in terms of our agenda, we're going to be doing so in 4 or 5 distinct buckets. So first, we're going to understand the 6 big losses. And we're going to look at this as a framework for how Prophecy can fit into your manufacturing process and ultimately create value in an implementation. So from there, we're going to look specifically at Smart Factory, which is powered by Prophecy, and how that aligns with the 6 big losses. And then from there, I'm going to be turning it over to my colleague Ron, who's going to do the Smart Factory Toolkit and the in-depth demo and use case exploration of the tool. And then we'll finish off with the full automation journey and any questions and next steps from there. So to start from the beginning, or the 50,000 foot overview, once again, this term OEE is a very hot topic term in the manufacturing world these days. And it's being paired with other buzzwords like IoT and where this is all coming from in terms of availability, performance losses, quality losses, etc. And these are all things that maybe we've experienced on a day-to-day on the shop floor. Maybe we've talked about and conversed with other manufacturing engineers. And once again, we're really trying to add some framework to these topics and connect the dots to how a tool like Smart Factory can create value in this world and solve some of these issues. So some of you might be familiar with this, but this is the idea of understanding the 6 big losses. So hypothetically, let's say you had a production asset. This could be a machine, this could be just a process. This is really any concept in our manufacturing world where we want to drill down to value and how to maximize that value. So let's assume you have your production asset. Maybe it is your Haas CNC machine, and you're trying to understand how to get the most out of that equipment. So how we would progress in this diagram is starting with calendar time, right? So this is the maximum amount of time that we can use that given asset or that Haas CNC machine. From there, we're going to remove any planned stops. These are things that we can control and are left with planned production time. And as we progress down this chart, you'll see we're left with effective production time, net production time, and production time. And while it's the smallest block in our diagram, this is really where the important information resides and where we're maximizing value. Right? This is where you can spend time making money at the end of the day. So what we really want to do is to maximize this production time. And how do we do that? Well, we're going to do that, obviously, by reducing these red blocks or these losses. So this is where the 6 big losses fit into the equation. And once again, things like availability losses, they come from equipment failure or maybe setup time. And looking at maybe speed losses, this is when we see a lot of idling and short stops. Once again, maybe it's with a Haas CNC machine, an injection molding machine, etc. And finally, our quality losses. So things like defects in a given process, reduced yield, etc. So once again, what we are driving to here is maximizing production time. This is where we're going to make our money. So we want to eliminate or reduce these 6 big losses to the best of our ability. And as we continue to analyze this from more of a 50,000 foot overview, the kind of natural solution here to these losses would be things like minimizing your machine downtime or minimizing those setup times. And how we're going to do this as it relates to prophecy is really to focus on these. So as you'll see in a little bit when Ron starts giving this demo, Smart Factory has a very unique set of flexible features that are addressable and really can be tailored to meet your individual 6 big losses. You know, as this diagram generically shows, these are all relatively the same issue based on size, but that will not be the case, right? For some machines or some participants in this attendee webinar, these different diagrams and blocks might be weighted differently. And we're really going to explore how Smart Factory and the resulting features can be tailored to, once again, reduce these 6 big losses, driving all the way to the point where we're really trying to maximize that production time so we can maximize our revenue and margin, and at the end of the day, run a more efficient manufacturing process with our given tool set. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Ron, and he's going to really connect the dots of how we can go from this framework of the 6 big losses and how prophecy can be addressed and used to reduce these 6 big losses. So go ahead, Ron.
Thanks, Ben. Good afternoon, everyone. So we're going to start to drill this down a little. Obviously, those 6 big losses drives a lot of behavior and a lot of time and attention in every manufacturer that's here today. Through this journey to get to Smart Factory and how we can really start to mitigate those big 6 is obviously through this process of getting data getting collected in a real-time fashion, moving that data so that we can actually consume it and transform it, and then ultimately be able to use that for automation and information for ability to drill down and get to root cause analysis. So along this journey, there's kind of three key areas that really get impacted through the solutions and through the process. Obviously, it's the machines. Obviously, being able to connect to the ecosystem of the just the host of different machines that you'll have on the factory floor. Everything from robots to CNCs to lathes to boring machines, grinding machines, right? The list is pretty large, but that connection is going to be extremely important. Obviously, the experience and the way that information is utilized on the factory floor is also going to be important. Most everyone that's here on the call today has probably got some type of manufacturing execution system on their floor. This could be the latest factory track that you're utilizing. It could be shop track that came with the application with a lot of the earlier versions. You could be using data collection. So we're going to talk about really in contrast from those environments to something that really embraces more of a smart factory methodology. And we're going to talk about how this impacts the factory floor in the way that operators would engage. We'll also talk about the information now that's going to be available throughout the enterprise that can really drive much more of a real-time view into operations. So we're really going to just touch on these areas as we go through, because it's all part of the digital transformation journey that most companies are looking to go on today. Are trying to reduce costs, simplify the operations, simplify processes, and especially when it comes to the shop floor. So talked about the first part is really the machine piece. If there's anyone on the call who has attempted to connect to some of their machines that are networked and have ability to connect, the good news is you've attempted that. What we found in our experience is that's a very difficult thing to do. The good news is with Smart Factory that's powered by Prophecy is it comes out of the box just ready to connect to hundreds, if not thousands of machines in those platforms. These machines all speak different languages. They all have different security protocols. Some, Siemens and et cetera, are kind of very proprietary in nature. They're a little hard to get to, but our team's experienced in these various machine platforms and their complexity to be able to get them connected up. And for those folks that may have some of the older machines, we've all seen these from grinding machines to various CNCs that may not have network capability. Well, the good news is now with the advancement of smart edge devices, there is a way to get to the data that we seek. So the good news is we come out of the box with the ability to connect to a large variety of machines and machine platforms so that now we can start to securely normalize that data. When I talk about normalizing the data, when you do get connected to the machine, if you're able to network to a platform, the good news is there's a lot of data available. The challenge is there's a lot of data available. The data was really created for the machine builder in mind. It wasn't really built for the concept of how we could utilize this to improve our machine downtime and get to the big six, if you will. It really wasn't designed around that concept. Well, that's where Smart Factory comes in. So we take all this machine data and now we start to compartmentalize and normalize that machine data so we can really get to the value that it can provide us. So there's elements on that machine that can help us with performance, maybe production, maybe predictive maintenance, a whole number of things. So the good news is that we normalize the connection. We start to then really silo off this data into the Smart Factory so we can start to use it throughout the process for a combination of automation, predictive maintenance, and really start to really locate in on those big six losses, because there's a lot of data elements here that that can help us along that journey. So obviously getting to that data is going to help, but we also have to supplement the data. And now I'm going to talk about that, that journey and what that means. So to start that journey, there's really two paths that a lot of companies will take. The first path could be really simple. It's a very quick time to value path because it doesn't assume that we really need to connect to any of the versions of Sightline to really be successful. And that path is focused on the asset or the machine. So in this focus, we really get the connection to the machine. We set it up for alerts and monitoring. And then we have displays that allow the team to really monitor that machine at a level that they really haven't been able to do before. Most companies will put out service or preventative maintenance, and they'll go do routine maintenance over periods of times, or they might be able to check some cycles or some cycle times related, and thus maybe get a little smarter with preventative maintenance, but it's still a challenge. Well, once that machine is connected into the smart factory, well, those challenges go away. Now we can really start to monitor and assess that machine in a real-time fashion to maybe get ahead of those predictive indicators that could tell us we're getting ready to have a break fix scenario and maybe make some scrap. So there's a lot of value in starting the journey just with getting the machines connected and start to measure and monitor those machines in a real-time fashion. Now, obviously, for a lot of companies, that's the start of the journey. That's not the end. We're really looking more now as we've got our machines connected, we really like to maybe talk about factory automation. Most of the solutions I mentioned earlier, and they're really good solutions, they've been around for a long time, Factory Track, Shop Track, and the like, are all forms of what's called manufacturing execution systems. Like I said, I've been working with Sightline close to 30 years. I've worked with a bunch of them. The good and the bad is they do a great job in helping us really manage and control a lot of things around production. The challenge can be is there's a lot of reliance on the operators, and thus training comes into play, being able to only capture certain pieces of information, because we know in our routings in Cloud Suite that, you know, we might have 10 process steps, but we really got to decide where our key points are at, or our control points, because we just can't afford the operator time that it takes to gather the other information. And there's always a benefit and a cause kind of thing going on to where we have to measure, is it really worth the time and energy to go capture that? Well, we can start to break that paradigm when the smart factory comes into play, because now when we get the machines connected with the operators in a real fashion, we can start to dynamically change how we automate the factory floor. The first part, as I talked about, was the connection. The alarms and notifications are a key part of the smart factory solution. These come ready and out of the box. There's no programming to do. So if I'm setting up a CNC machine and maybe spindle rate's important, load's important, and maybe pressure's important. Those are three key monitoring points that we would set up, and we would monitor those in a real-time fashion, including if, for example, the pump pressure rate of change started to escalate too high or too low, then that may be a predictive indicator that we're about to have a problem. And that's where we can start to change things. No more do you wait for the break fix to happen. We can now get out in front of that, send off the alarms, get the alerts to the appropriate individuals. Thus, we can do a preemptive measure to stop the machine from actually breaking and creating scrap and maybe a longer unplanned downtime. With this, we can also start to look at the number of cycles, idle times, and a number of things that the machine goes through in the daily life cycle that lead to the big six that Ben talked about. And we can help mitigate that just providing this simple visibility, right? So this, regarding of whether you would like to start with a simple program on a machine path or maybe do it with a smart factory automation path, the alarms and notifications are going to be a key part of that journey. Visualization is also a very key important part of the journey. As the alarms and things are getting set on the machines, well, maybe we would like to have displays in the maintenance area or maybe in the machine or CNC group, so that the operators kind of know the status of machines and where we may have issues, because a lot of times operators are a key part of the maintenance path for a lot of assets. So we have a concept within Smart Factory called and-on boards. These are built off of the traditional Japanese word, to where it's really about a visual management display that allows a team to effectively see where we have an issue or maybe a bottleneck. So these can be run on any tablet like a Chromebook, or can even be run on a TV. So you could put a little Raspberry Pi into an HD TV. You can run the link for the machine group and on board, and then everybody could be able to see that display. These are all part of the smart factory layout and can be deployed throughout the factory floor. As I mentioned on this journey, the assets and the connections, the visibility is going to be important, but also maybe changing the operator interaction from maybe a traditional shop track or a factory track log in and log out type of methodology to looking something that's more connected real time with the machine, in which we will automate a lot of activity in the background. So an HMI, or a human machine interface, is really a combination of machine and sightline information, maybe related to a job that we're manufacturing. And through the designer, you can build and deploy these according to the machine group or the machine class and what they would be doing. Some companies may use jobs, some may be production schedules, some may be doing, high volume repetitive. That could be just, JIT and Kanban, and I'm making a part and I'm punching it out on a plastic injection mold machine, right? So a whole different variety of production methods, and thus HMIs can go and marry that production according to the level of depth that you want to go through. So these HMIs really connect the operator with the machine and the production that we're doing. So now we can select a job. We can maybe do some production automation regarding transactions. We maybe want to interact with quality, because some companies are traceability required in A&D and other places. So there's a whole lot of things that can now be automated that were traditionally either separate processes or very manual in nature, and sometimes could require a lot of operator interaction. So this is where it really gets to change. And so then the visibility that we provide both to the operator, to the groups and the teams of where maybe we're looking at the CNC or the grinding group, what is their performance? How are they tracking? Are we ahead or behind? These are all possible in kind of the smart factory and the automation that we can provide. From a deployment standpoint, we can provide a plug-in to Factory Track to enable Smart Factory. You can get access to Smart Factory just simply through the tools provided by the Prophecy platform. So we really try to make this easy. So it depends on your environment. Some companies have already invested into Factory Track. So this is an example of a plug-in that we would provide for Smart Factory into Factory Track. And thus you could utilize all the power and capabilities within that ecosystem, still providing operators the ability to get the dispatch, view their drawings. And then we can look to really automate a lot of various activities within that environment. So whether you're running Factory Track, you're running data collection, or these other methods, we have a method in which we can embrace that method that you're using. And then obviously protect that if you're looking to move forward, to move into the cloud, because we provide solutions for both on-prem as well as folks in the cloud. We've worked with both. And the example I'll do here in a moment just kind of solidifies this and kind of brings it all together. Obviously, the display of information could be also in a number of different ways. We have dashboards that drop directly into the V10 environment, so that you can have like a smart factory dashboard that gives you all the OEE and the daily production and downtime reasons, scrap, etc. Because we know the visualization of this information from a real-time perspective is going to be important. And it's part of the journey. That's part of the root cause analysis, being able to really do the analysis of maybe what's driving the big six losses. And there, by giving definition to it, we get the root cause, and then we can start to get a game plan of how we effectively can start to reduce it or mitigate it. So with that, I'm going to do a quick example, but first let me set this up to kind of, so everyone knows what they're looking at. So it's one to where I am going to be manufacturing a job within Cloud Suite. In this job that I'm going to be manufacturing, I have a part. Behind that is a certain spec. And in that part, I have production. I'm going to have to deal with quality. I'm going to also, within the process, have scrap that occurs. And as the real world is always throwing us monkey wrenches, I'm going to have to deal with maybe some maintenance and some unforeseen challenges. So that's kind of the environment. And so I'm going to have an operator that'll have a tablet, and he'll be running just a little web page for the smart factory on that tablet. And then thus he's going to be connected to this ecosystem that allows us to not only execute this job, but then be able to automate a lot of the activity around that work order. So let me get my application over here so we can see this. So everyone should see that I have my my N4 Sightline system up, and in this system I've got my smart factory here. Oops, let me go turn that guy off. I have a web page that runs interactively there. That was an unforeseen concert we got to go to. So in here I have my environment, that I have my smart factory homepage, and I just had to re-log in and authenticate here. But we can see that in this environment, this is running within the version 10 environment within Cloud Suite Industrial. So I can see that I have everything to be able to view my smart factory, maybe my OEE, I have elapsed time and scrap, maybe I'm seeing some temperatures off my machines, doing some various analysis, if you will, and the ability to come in to get at this data, to be able to look down and filter by machine. This is all part of the ecosystem that Smart Factory enables, including the visualization of my alarm panels. As we talked about earlier, being able to set the alarms, that I can see I have alarms here set for some feed percentages, spindle speeds. I can see that I have pump pressure, and that one's a rate of change that we talked about. So if my pump pressure starts to move in a direction at a certain rate, then that's going to key off alarms that would key my team in that we have an issue and we can get out in front of it. So this ecosystem is all powered by Smart Factory and plugs into my Sightline environment, both in the cloud and on premise. And as I mentioned, I can also deploy this via Factory Track. So this is the Smart Factory plugin to Factory Track. And see here, I have the ability to go see job dispatch or my operator HMI. And so this is really the area that we're going to look at is I've got machines that are connected up, and I've got operators that are doing work. So I'm going to launch my operator HMI. And so this HMI is where the operator would really come in. Hang on one second. Let me get my panel up. It didn't refresh earlier, so sorry. Sometimes it sits too long and I've got to get it refreshed. So from Factory Track, I'll be able to launch these key areas of Smart Factory. And one is I've got an operator that's going to be making parts. I've also in my ecosystem, let me change that one. I've also got within my ecosystem the ability to look at it from a maintenance perspective. So I have my machines here, the machine status. What are the baselines of my machines from a cycle perspective? Maybe I've got some alarm limits set, and then what the alarm types are, and then some critical information that may be important around maybe PMs are be required, or it looks like I've got a sensor that's overheating that we may need to take a look at, etc. So the maintenance team can have a very different view from like the production team, for example, that could have an and-on looking at the various productivity measures across the shop. You can see this is all feeding back real time. So as I mentioned, we're going to make a part. Obviously the operator could select maybe the work order, or from the dispatch, it would default in. I've got my gear. And thus really the operator is really going to come in and he's going to, because setup is required, it lights up and lets him know I need to come in and perform a setup process. So the operator would kind of do a start and an end setup because that is required. If the setup was not required, those buttons would not even be visible. And then when the operator is finished, a said setup requirement and all the things that they do, he's probably going to then start to run parts. And by starting to run parts, we can see now that the HMI, it's a combination of machine and Sightline data. We can see that I'm monitoring pump pressure. We just put that on there so you get a visualization of what it's doing in the background. I can see I'm making 3 of 28 parts. And notice that I mentioned we're going to be dealing with quality and scrap and a whole number of things. So in here, it's detected that I have a pause now after the 5th part that has been run of the gear on my CNC. So it read the quality plan out of Sightline and determined by my in-process quality plan that I must perform a caliper measurement after every 5th part. So here it's giving the operator a chance to use maybe the Bluetooth or electronic caliper, to where that would be you know, kind of a button push and will be updated to the HMI. And then we would send that data over to get validated through Cloud Suite. Well, we passed the check because there was a plus or minus on the tolerance that allowed us to do that. Now notice I'm up to part 7. If I go out, I can see that I'm running here on my maintenance panel, and I can also see that I'm now up to part 8 on my team Andon that's running on the TV above the group that I'm part of. And I can see that I'm nominally in good shape on everything. Even my shop view display that may have all my assets across my shop floor showing what's running and what's not. It's showing I've got 10 parts made and I'm looking at 100%, and I'm part of the MC300M1. So that's the group that I'm in. So all these displays are dynamically connected, from the operator and the work he's doing to the team to the whole plant floor. Everyone has visibility. So now here I have a chance to now do another scan. And as the real world will throw us little curveballs, that scan of 23 is outside of tolerance. So we have built this HMI in this example to deal with a lot of different things. In the real world, would you have all this going on? Probably not. But today is to kind of demonstrate to the group kind of what is possible. So here we've decided that it's important to allow the operator to know this is outside of tolerance, and to give him a chance maybe to do something with a quality hold tag, to where maybe that's barcoded, it could be printed so the part can get isolated. But he can also give us, through a button click or like a drop down, some things. Maybe he's noticing the pump pressure is a little off, and thus he's saying, I think I have a machine issue. So then we'll update the job, we'll print the QA tag, the operator is back to making parts. But notice now we have over here, our alarms are still good, but notice I have made a piece of scrap related to my team Andon. So everybody knows that now, obviously our productivity is going to get impacted by that. And so we're coming up on the next one to where, let's say also we have another one that I get sort of a bad measurement. I'll also say this is an equipment issue, and we're going to update and print the QA tag. So notice now my counter over here, we see scrap. Oh, wow, look at this, low spindle override. Now I'm starting to see on all my displays that I have an issue related to the spindle override. This is being displayed on all my things along with the scrap, so that the team really knows that we have a problem. So we're coming up on our next measurement. Lo and behold, oh wow, we just we went down. We're not making parts anymore. So we have a coolant pump that just went out. So now notice over here on my maintenance panel, I have an alarm that's going off. It says the coolant pump was disabled, and I have ability to engage with Cloud Suite's maintenance program by these buttons, or the operator could do the same by these 2 red buttons up top that said maintenance and go offline. Now, what happened is, when that happened in the background, this could be just visualization if you're doing the maintenance only, but if you want the smart factory experience, this is where it can actually talk to Cloud Suite. So I'm going over, I am logged into Cloud Suite Sightline, and I'm going to look to see if anything is created today for a maintenance ticket. So as a result of that operator hitting the button, I have a maintenance request ticket out here for the coolant pump being disabled. Notes could be out there for the speeds and the feeds and the fault alarm codes, so that the tech would know exactly what happened. And then we're tracking that to the individual unit that was compromised during that machine down situation. We also, at the same time, if you wanted to have this happen, we can also update what I would call the APS engine for planning and scheduling. So I'm over at my MC300M1, and when I look at the maintenance tab, you will see right here today, 10/5, that maintenance ID 82 was created, And then by the maintenance tech opening that and giving us an estimation of time, then we can also create a shift exception for the emergency repair. So when planning runs, it will not see that that capacity is now available for that machine. That's a direct example of how the connected smart factory can dynamically do things in a very automated fashion that normally would have taken a person calls and manual steps and a bunch of processes to make that happen. That really happened all from a simple click here on our HMI that the operator and the machine went into a down situation, and the rest was all automated behind the scenes to create the maintenance ticket as well as the potential resource schedule exception that APS could see. So with this, obviously, we want to get back in the business of making parts. The tech comes out, he does his work. We're now to making parts and getting value out. So this environment and the experience here is really up to the individual company of what they want their operators to see. That's kind of the key. But being able to give scrap definition and scrap reason codes, complete with maybe micro downtimes, those are all possible within this environment. Notice that our performance has been highly impacted. We have 2 pieces of scrap and our performance really took a hit once we went down, but that's all getting dynamically tracked, and that's kind of the key. So when we come up to finishing our parts, we've got a very small run, but it illustrated a number of different capabilities that are possible ways that you could deploy the smart factory by prophecy. So here we're going to come up on part 28. Notice that once I finish my parts, it now says, hey, it lit up the end run button. So I click that. This is also another element of an example of automation. I'm going to go over to unposted job trans. I'm going to filter for today. And as a result of the operator clicking a few buttons, we created sequentially the transactions behind the scenes that would support his setup time, very small, but setup time. We also supported that first scrap transaction, one with a reason code, the second scrap transaction with there again, another reason code, and the final job finish, 28 parts. We tried to complete, we completed 26, that's the 2 that we scrapped, and I have machine/labor time on that particular operation with very little interaction from the operator. That's the dynamic difference. The operator didn't necessarily have to leave to go to a kiosk to clock in and out. He engaged and dealt with quality. He also dealt with scrap as part of that process and machine downtime. We wanted to mitigate the time that the operator is away from the machine, dealing with these other things, and maybe give more definition to transactional or root cause in areas that you just don't have the time and energy to collect it into Cloud Suite. Not that that's bad, it just requires too much operator time. Here we could prompt for, if the machine is idle for 5 minutes, give me a reason for that machine being down for the 5 minutes. And that gets logged, and then all this information is being then bubbled back up to where, as a group, we can see our performance from an OEE perspective, so that at any time we want to see what's going on with the grinder and the grinder group, how much idle time, how much run time, isolate a particular day, so that we could then see within that shift, within that time period, how we were running and looking at OEE. There's a whole number of ways that you may want to look at the analysis coming out from Smart Factory, but the whole goal is to start the journey. The data collection is going to be the key, and we want to do that in a very automated fashion. So here we can see parts by reason codes, inadequate, waiting on materials. There's a whole bunch of reasons that could fall under, why we're getting certain results that we're getting from the factory floor. There again, we want to get back to those 6 big losses, and this platform enables companies to really start that journey. All this being obviously within the ecosystem of Sightline. This is one that we try to make it as easy as possible for companies to start this journey. So with that, let's transition over to kind of how companies really make this happen. One of the things that's kind of unique versus maybe some of the other platforms that are out there that are in this smart factory IoT arena is that we created Prophecy with a toolkit. So think of this much like Mongoose is the toolkit for Sightline to allow customers to really personalize and build out what makes them unique. Well, we created the same toolkit within Prophecy that enables all that smart factory uniqueness. Graphical drag and drop, very visual, combined Sightline with the ERP data. So this can obviously, just as a side note, this can talk to other applications and platforms. So if you had an environment to where so many of the plants were on Sightline, but maybe some other plants that were on another ERP, I don't really know why, because Sightline's the best, but say they were, you could still use Prophecy as a single application for Smart Factory across all those platforms. But we did build in the Mongoose and the API REST control so that you could dynamically talk on-prem as well as the cloud, and we can really connect to those all the versions of Sightline. So this enables you to really dial it into the type of manufacturing you're doing. So today, obviously, that was like a CNC example, but let's say you had a plastic injection mold machine and you were having a 2-cavity mold, you've got temperatures, you've got ranges, you've got pressure. You know, it could be a different type of manufacturing process to maybe you're running a co-product job because one mold is going to pump out 3 different parts or a single part, and it may do that for 24 hours. Well, that HMI experience would be quite different than the CNC. That's the beauty of the toolkit, is now we can dial that into the type of manufacturing you're doing so that it's not a one size fits all. In addition, we have the data accumulation and creation engine within a Prophecy that allows us to do web and HTTP pushes, APIs, send it to other systems. We can talk to other maintenance packages. We can talk to other analytics platforms. This also helps us send it into Data Lake, for example, because we might want to use the powerful tools of Burst to do a lot of the analysis as well. So a lot of different capabilities there that are built and brought out of the box by this platform. Here's an example of how I basically built the Smart Factory dashboard that was in Mingle that we saw. It's nothing more than directed URLs. We give you that throughout Prophecy so you can run them and build them within your ecosystem just as simple URLs. So there I wanted the extruder temperature to be shown up top. I get the directed URL, I put that in Mingle, I publish the page, and now everyone has access to that information coming in real time. So as you start your journey, you've got all types of equipment. Those equipment, some may be older, to which you may need some edge devices. Our team is very well versed in helping companies kind of assess their situation and then look at things like some of these wireless edge devices, cameras. We did one little test project where we were monitoring the stack lights on the top of a CNC machine. And then we built dashboards off of the video camera monitoring the stack lights. That was very unobtrusive because the camera was several feet away. That was using a little Raspberry Pi and a video device to monitor the stack lights. But we got a lot of rich data just from that very simple connection. So whether it starts to be simple, we full on go to the PLC or somewhere in between, the good news is, regardless of the age of the machine and where it's at, we can probably find a way through that and edge devices to be able to connect to start to get some real data of value that can help you on your smart factory journey. One of the early customers that we worked with on their journey started out with IoT as one of their key strategic initiatives for their corporation. These folks make some of the, if not the best glass cooktops in the entire world. You've probably seen them. They're maybe on your counter, your cooktop at home. It's got a little Circle K in the corner. Well, you know that's manufactured, that glass cooktop, by Eurocaro. They have a very advanced manufacturing facility, and they came to us with a real problem, and they had attempted to do a lot of the connections to the machines themselves. They were looking for a platform. And I guess we're at the right time at the right place. Today, they have standardized on the Prophecy and Smart Factory platform. And now today they're building their own HMIs, they're doing their own andons, and they're interacting with Sightline in very new and inventive ways. They have, like a lot of companies, they have a lot of different types of equipments, from lines to individual machines to robots, etc. And they're continuing to find new and inventive ways to help automate and turn that data into things that they can take action on. But one of our early customers, and they are well on their way to really doing their own thing. I'm very excited about the things that are happening at Eurocaro. So I'll kind of turn this back over to Ben. We want to get to obviously some time for some Q&A. Just to kind of recap, there's a lot of different ways that companies can look to deploy and start the journey with Smart Factory. Some, it's just a huge thing to finally get real-time connections to some of those key assets and machines on the floor. Something that simple can start your journey. And then you can start to think about how we get to mitigating those big six and start to drive a lot of value from the digital transformation that occurs through that journey. Some companies will want to take a look at Cloud Suite V10 and going to the cloud as part of this journey, right? We help companies engage in any and all of those processes around the Smart Factory. So it's something that we love to do. And obviously we'd love to talk to each of you individually. I'll kind of transition this over to Ben and Philip to see if we have any questions, and we'll kind of do a wrap up.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, thanks a lot, Ron. That was very informative. And actually, we do have one question. So I think this is now a good time just to maybe take a pause and address some questions. So just looking at the Q&A, it looks like an anonymous attendee submitted a question. Was the job operation completed through automation to Sightline?
The job operation could be completed, it could be updated, it could be closed. So it could be any and all those things. So it really depends on how you would like your job operations to be completed and updated. So it really depends on how you would like that to work and what the operators are. Some, they don't want the operations closed because sometimes they go back and they may want to put some rework against that potentially, right? So it really depends on your particular environment of how you'd like to have the operators to have control of that or not. But it certainly can be a behind the scenes, a standard as part of that. We would close the particular operation. If it's the last one, we can close the job issue to the parent if it's part of a sub. So you have a lot of options there.
Okay, thanks a lot. And to the anonymous attendee, I hope that was helpful. And we just had another question come in. So this is great. Please, everyone, keep submitting them. So from maybe the same or maybe another anonymous attendee, can you tell me more about the computer vision? Are you able to use stack light sensors, assuming the stack lights work, as this anonymous attendee has some very old equipment?
Yeah, so if it's a sensor and we have the ability to connect to something in that sensor, and I don't know if one of our tech engineers, Scott, is on, but he's actually, him and Philip have, or Pete have actually done that. They can chime in with probably some more details, but absolutely, we can connect to those. Those are just different platforms that we can utilize. And then depending on the type of data that we can pull from that sensor, then we can use that in visibility, andons, et cetera, to drive data from it.
Okay, great, thank you. And it looks like we have one more question from, I apologize if I missed your name, Joy, but it is this the same thing as Factory Track?
The simple answer is probably no. Think of Factory Track as a lot more, especially around materials, material movements, schedules, dispatching, time and attendance types functions and things, if you will. We're really focused on the operator engagement around the machine and the manufacturing automation. That's kind of where we're different. So we enhance all the capabilities that Factory Track brings to the table. So as you saw, I ran that out of Factory Track. Smart Factory can be a plug-in to Factory Track, and we can enhance and automate a lot of the things that Factory Track is already doing. I saw another question, I think, around the Gov Cloud. We're continuing to assess that because within the Gov Cloud and CMMC, there are certain requirements that are going to be part of that environment, right? So I think, as far as our team has looked at this in the first few DoD accounts, Department of Defense and Aerospace and Defense that we've engaged in, that it is our belief and intent that we'll be able to support this within the N4 Gov Cloud. Not there yet, but we're working on it.
Okay, excellent. So let's see, before I hand this over to Phil to really wrap up with a quick overview of licensing and how to engage and concluding statements, are there any other questions from the attendees? If so, please put them in the question and answer panel now.
Then we had another one that came in is, the smart factory have to integrate to CSI?
No, obviously this was built to be version agnostic. And so some companies may start with just maybe some machine monitoring. That would not require really CSI integration, right? It wouldn't require Sightline integration. We would just come in, connect to the machines. We'd set up some displays, andons, and the like, so that you can start to get handle of unplanned downtime and machine monitoring and dealing with maybe some plant maintenance and those kind of things. That journey can start. It's a very quick time to value, and it does not require Sightline or Cloud Suite integration.
We got a follow up to that. Then says, if I understand that we don't measure OEE today, so if I understand that correctly, the Prophecy Smart Factory could help us now, even though we don't monitor OEE today.
Correct. You could start to get handle on a number of the components of OEE. So this can definitely help you start that journey.
As a reminder, any other Q&A questions that come in, feel free to pop those in, and we'll make sure that we're monitoring those. Okay, very good. Well, there's a question about as we wrap up here, we're going to talk a little bit about how Prophecy is licensed. That's always the question that comes up. Everybody wants to walk away from that, and certainly reach out to Ben or myself after this, and we can talk very specifically with you and what your situation is in your facility and that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, Prophecy is a subscription-based solution. We typically start with a 3-year subscription, and we are machine or smart connector based. It is not a user-based licensing model. It is really, again, going back to the smart connections that we're making, and we're the machines that we'll be working with you, and we can have a conversation about how that looks and what your floor looks like and your facility, and get into the details with you on those type topics. And then again, we typically start with most of our customers at this point have started with a pilot type approach. Let's say 10 to 15, maybe 20 machines on their shop floor, and really start to measure data from that perspective, and then understand the capabilities themselves, and then start to leverage it and grow it from that standpoint. So we're very comfortable in working with you, kind of starting small and then growing what you're doing with it. And that's really what we see customers do. Eurocaro is a great example of that. They started with some basic things they needed to get out of the solution, and then the oh yeah light bulb has come on, and you continue to grow and evolve with the capabilities that are just built within Prophecy and Smart Factory.
Okay, great. Well, looking at the clock, we have about 5 minutes left. So in conclusion, thank you, everyone. Really appreciate your time today attending this webinar. Hopefully it was informative of Prophecy and the solutions that we're solving by implementing this tool. So with that being said, as you can see, how to engage, you can either reach out to myself, Ron, Phil, and we'll be working with our team to send out the recording of this. And please let us know if you have any further questions after watching the recording.